So here's my second proposition. Contrary to the official view, the source of today's flood of addiction lies in the dislocation of entire populations of people from their communities and cultures in the globalizing postmodern world. Can you put that together? The alternative, which I say will replace the official view, not too long from now, the alternative comes not, of course, from the top down, but from the bottom up. And this is part of my subtitle, Going Up the Down Ladder. We got to go up the ladder because in this case, the real wisdom is coming from the bottom up. It's coming from the workers in the field who are out there saying, well, look it. These people are addicted because, dare I say, they've got shit for a life. That's why they're addicted. And they're grasping onto something which it's not great, but it's one great big jump better than having nothing. That's what they're saying. And it's not just field workers who are saying that. It's not just clinical people who are saying that. It's also academics. Unfortunately, it's the academics at the bottom of the hierarchy, too. It's the historians and the social scientists, the ones who are losing all their funding. I just came from a wonderful conference in Glasgow, which was a conference of historians of alcohol and drugs. Great conference. In which, and I would say virtually nobody in that conference believed the official view of addiction, and they would all, I may be overstating this, but at least most would tend to lean towards this kind of a view. So what is this kind of a view? This kind of a view differs dramatically. I mean, it's not as simple as turning it around up on its head. It differs dramatically. It's a paradigm shift from the official view. What this says is that if we want to understand addiction, we have to understand it on a population level. It doesn't mean, in the end, of course, we have to understand it on an individual level, but we start on a population level. And we have to say that look, whole societies go galloping into big addiction problems. Whole societies. And this is built on the concept of dislocation. Dislocation is just a piece of jargon, but you'll know what I mean. Dislocation refers to the fact that people have to have a life. And to have a life is something social. It means people have to be part of a community, of a family, of a value system, perhaps a set of spiritual beliefs. People have to belong. This is crucial in psychology, and this is, I think, what Margaret was talking about right at the start of this. If people don't belong, if people don't have a place in the world, then they're really hurting, and they're not just hurting in the sense that they're likely to become addicted. They're hurting in the sense that they're really not going to be they're not going to be contributing to the economy. They're much too preoccupied with their problems. They're looking for their identity. They don't have a life. They've got no time for the economy, and they're going to be depressed. They're going to be anxious. They're going to be violent. Of course, there's a very high likelihood of suicide. They're going to there's a high likelihood of child abuse. When people are in that state, they don't like themselves, they don't have an identity, and they're worthless and dangerous. And of course, people get into that state in many ways. Let's say a person is rejected by their society just because there's something amiss with them. Their society just can't tolerate them. They become dislocated, and they go into that kind of a state. Or let's say that an empire collapses. Like the Roman Empire collapsed, and what happens? Well, you see this kind of chaos in the people. It shows up in the individual psychology of the people. The only period that I've been able to find where I think addiction and these other problems was probably as common as it is now was the Roman Empire of St. Augustine. Again, I go back to St. Augustine because the empire was in collapse. Everything possible was going wrong, and they believed correctly that the world was coming to an end. It was coming to an end. I mean, the imperial world was coming to an end. And the people were like this. And St. Augustine thought, well, you can't really take any drug or do anything that's pleasurable because you're going to get addicted to it. Because dislocated people really don't have a life. And what do you do when you don't have a life? Well, you act like this, all these problems, but you've got to do something about it. I mean, you can commit suicide. You can just go into, you can give up completely and go into a kind of catatonic or psychotic state, or you can become addicted. And addiction has to be understood this way. Addiction functions. And if you work with addicts, you know this. Addiction functions. It's a way, it is a life. It's not the greatest life. It's not the life you thought you were going to have, but it is a life. And so that in my part of the world, we have a so-called downtown east side, and all the junkies are down there. And it's a great discovery of recent years that those junkies are not just down there, you know, chasing heroin and shooting up and selling their bodies on the streets. That's not what they're doing. They do that. But what they're also doing, they have a society. And it's quite a real and active society. And it matters to them. And of course, you know, they're in danger from their neighbors, but they also have their close friends, and they have their close associates, and that society really works. Addiction is always provides a substitute for a life that has some validity to it. Dislocation leads to addiction because addiction is a way of adapting to dislocation. Dislocation is unbearable. This is why, for example, solitary confinement or ostracism, or excommunication. These are all horrible punishments which are done to people. These are punishments which inflict dislocation on people. They're horrible punishments because we're not built to bear that. We are social animals. We don't work that way. We have to be social animals, and to be dislocated is to be suffering badly and to be vulnerable for addiction, because addiction is a partial compensation. It's a partial life.